Hey everyone, looks like we're live.
How's it
Welcome to another episode of Simply Tech Live. We have an awesome and very special discussion laid out for today where typically we talk about technology on this broadcast, but today we're going to be talking about the human component of technology, which we think is the most important part of technology. And introducing our special guest, Ali, why don't you do the honor?
Sure. First of all, before we introducing our special guest, I think we started planning this specific session about 3 months ago, right? Right, Derek? Remember we talked about having April on the show. It finally happened, and I can't be more excited. I think this is going to be a very relevant discussion with everything that is going on today in our society and in our country. But let's have April introducing herself.
First of all, thank you guys for inviting me. I'm so excited, and this could not be a more relevant time to have this discussion, for sure. And you're right, Ali, it was about 3 months we started talking about this. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm April Walker, and I'm the director of the Philadelphia Microsoft Technology Center, and we're located here in Malvern. I've been with Microsoft now a little over 2 years, and it's been an amazing 2 years. We have really built a great ecosystem in the greater Philadelphia area around digital transformation. For me, I'm actually from this area, but I haven't lived here in more than 3 decades. Most recently, I was in North Carolina in Raleigh, working for a large insurance company as their vice president of engineering. And was there for a little over 2 years. And I always sort of remarked that Microsoft brought me back home. So now I'm able to spend real time with my family. At least before COVID, I would be able to spend real time with my family. So it's great to be here.
Absolutely. And, I kind of miss hanging out with you in person. I know last time we saw each other was almost like 4 months ago that we had a meeting. So I'm glad that we finally got to meet. But I think, Derek, maybe we should start with the conversation.
Yeah, so the title of the episode today and the discussion is the evolution of D&I in tech, diversity and inclusion in tech. And it's an important topic, and especially right now. And again, we planned this a little while ago, not knowing that there would be so many events that would be absolutely rocking the entire nation, the world. Where people are feeling every kind of mix of emotion from fear and ignorance, curiosity, frustration, anger at varying intensities, right? Different people are feeling different things. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
I think it would be really great, April, if you can just talk about, and again, we're not going to just sit here for a long time, but talk about how you're feeling, what's going on with you, your community, what's going on.
Yeah, it's very telling, Derek, that the world has changed so quickly. We've had some very trying times of late. Today alone, we think about Mr. Floyd's memorial service is being held as we speak. Breonna Taylor's preliminary hearing is being held as we speak. Just yesterday, we think about the officers were arrested for Mr. Floyd's murder. Last week, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, was just released from house incarceration for protecting himself, his girlfriend, and his property. All of this is on the backdrop of a pandemic. And I think, I know, like many of us, I'm mourning, I'm sad, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, but I'm also hopeful, because what I do know and what we all have experienced is that in this universal timeout where we've been proverbially sent to our rooms, we have to see this every day. We're forced to feel our emotions. We get to really see what's happening in communities of color, specifically the Black community. And it's a bit liberating in a way, because we are now forced to address it. And I am so encouraged by not just the young people and all of the protesters that are peacefully protesting and having their voices heard in the United States, but also globally. This has become a global movement. And I was sharing recently with my colleagues that tomorrow will mark my second anniversary on my 27th birthday. And it's exciting to know and to really feel that we're going to see real change. And I truly believe that. So, there is a silver lining in all of this tragedy.
I really appreciate that, April. And it's words of encouragement like that I think are setting a lot of people apart from the different crowds, whether it be in a protest or whether it be at work.
Yeah.
And so what we wanted to discuss is this evolution of this thing, this diversity and inclusion thing, right? And I've only been in tech for 3 years or so. You and Ali both have a tremendous amount of experience, so you guys are going to have to weigh in where you see fit. But how did this thing start? Like, what was the genesis of diversity and inclusion? Like, tell us what that looks like, April.
So it's interesting. I started over 3 decades ago. And I started during a time where there was the only game in town, if you will, was government contracting. They had all the money for tech, if you will, or information systems, as it was known back there. And then I started in the .com era. I worked for AOL. And honestly, the conversations of D&I, they really weren't top of mind. For me, or it seemed to me, that once we started seeing the economic opportunity with what came along with technology and innovation, it was then that we started to see this disparity of opportunity for those and access, broadband access, if you will, access to these types of jobs that entailed a STEM background. It was only then that I started to really feel and see and hear more of this diversity and the need for diversity and inclusion. There was a significant lack thereof. I mean, I came up in a time where, honestly, I had no role models that looked like me. No one looked like me in my field. And I started out in infrastructure, building lands and networks and things of that nature. Ali, I'm sure you could share in some of that as well. But we didn't see a lot. And for me, specifically as a woman of color, Black woman, there was never a uniqueness in my feeling of isolation because it was just norm. I was always the only in the room, for sure.
And so Ali, and a little bit about your background. You obviously represent the international community. What does isolation? Was that isolation the normal for you as well?
So it's an interesting question. No, when I was back in my own country. But as we discussed prior to our call today with April, when I moved to US, and this was back in 1999, I was just trying to kind of settle in. It's a brand new culture, new country. And unfortunately, 9/11 happened. And this is what I was explaining to my own son, that I moved to this country, to US, to kind of leave behind everything that I went through in my younger years, and making sure that, my kid is not going to go through that, whether it's a war or oppression and anything like that. But I truly understood the meaning of injustice and racism the day after 9/11. And that's a long story. I'm not going to take too much of time today. But one thing I can say is that before that, I didn't have any understanding of what does that mean. So when, as an African-American, you're talking about, hey, this has been like this for the past 400 years, is really, really hard to understand and have some empathy unless you go through some sort of things. And I'm here really just to more listening to April more than, talking about my own expression.
We appreciate your stories as well, Ali.
Yeah. So, okay. So we're talking about this whole era, April, and Ali, of isolation, and how that wasn't that experience is so much different than it is today.
Yeah.
When you see some of the tweets, I mean, what came from Satya Nadella earlier this Monday about racism, and how our organization is completely against it, and you see these other CEOs of these businesses really stepping forward, and you see our peers reaching out to us and texting us and seeing if we're okay. I got this amazing text message from a manager a couple levels above me, just asking if I was okay. He sent me a quote from MLK. Had another peer reach out to tell me that he's thinking of me.
Yeah.
What did that look like, during times where like Rodney King type of moments and other moments in the 90s? And was that there?
I think it was there in pockets. What you're talking about now is a true embracing of allyship. And I too share in those examples where I've had colleagues and friends of mine that are not a part of or the African American community or Black community reach out and want to know, are you okay? What can we do to help? I was recently on a call and I tried to express that the first thing that I would ask, again, there's a plan of action for sure. But the first thing you have to do is you have to listen. Because if through listening, first with your ears and through your heart, that is the empathy that will create the stage for how you then can act, right? And when you think about how things were before, and you denoted the Rodney King era, there was a lot of anger as it is today. And it saddens me that still, some 30 some odd years later, we're here again, still. But what I do feel is different from that time, is there is more empathy, but more specifically, there's more awareness and willingness to do something about it. I think the younger generation has really helped to sort of springboard. They've built this stage where people are more open, they're more willing, and I'm embracing the notion that change is going to come through them, through this experience. And when I was growing up, I would always hear, and I learned very early, that through pain is growth. And I know that when we think about the isolation, your earlier question, you asked me about, the world in which I came up in through this career, and I was expressing that during that time, late 80s, early 90s, there weren't people who looked like me in the STEM space. And it still today is one that we need to do better in, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, I'm sure. But the isolation, at the very least for right now, the way we're feeling right now in the world we all occupy, I'm feeling less isolated. And I think a lot of us are feeling less isolated. And it's not relegated to just those of color. I think we're starting to see ourselves as humans first. That certainly is my wish and my hope.
Yeah. And I'm trying to resonate with some things that you're saying. So in terms of change, things that have changed, and I love that you're talking about how you were feeling and how the world was at that time. When you think about going into a room, and this is like a graphic, it's just like right in my brain. You go into a room, there's like 20 people in there. You're going to do an all hands meeting, or you're going to talk about something. The first thing that I do when I enter that room is I look around to see if there's anyone that looks anything like me. That's just something I don't know if anyone else, that's just something that happens. Yeah. And if there's not, I get a little anxiety. What's the difference, do you think, if there is a difference, of you walking into a room 20 years ago as opposed to walking into a room today? Is there a change in your thought? Is there a change in the way the room looks?
There's not really a change necessarily in the way the room looks, but there is a change in the way that I react to the room. And that comes with time and experience. That anxiety that you speak of, sure, I had that coming up in the earlier stages of my career. But what I learned through time is that when I walk into a room, I understand fully that there are perceptions that will be made about me or exist about me before I even open my mouth. There are questions about my credibility for being in the room, at the table, having a voice. And what I have learned over time is that I, while still maintaining my authenticity and my true self, have to be a walking contradiction to whatever that person or persons may have saw on television or read in the news or grew up learning. Racism and discrimination, they're learned behaviors. And what I learned over the years is that the anxiety that you may feel, Derek, right now, that will go away in time because you own your space. You recognize that you have value and that your contributions are valued and appreciated. But you first learn that internally. And when you do so, it makes for a much more engaged and successful meeting, and not just for the things that you contribute in a meeting, but also for the things that you know that you're going to be leaving people with. Because not only will you embark and impart some great jewels or nuggets of information, but they're also going to now leave that room smarter about people that look like you and look like me and look like Ollie, because you are, very systematically chipping away at all of the stereotypes that people have. Now, yes, that's a big burden to carry. It is. As a Black woman, we tend to carry this cloak. I always call it the big, Superwoman T-shirt, strong Black woman. And we have our vulnerabilities too. But we also have our desires and our aspirations, and we have the same dreams, and we have the same hopes. And we still want to be treated, obviously, as an equal, whether you're a man or a woman or any and of any ethnicity, But what I have learned over time is that you can't change anyone else's view or perception of you. You can only control how you react to them. That's a significant. It is really important.
Very well said. Very well said. I want to just have a question for you, April. So, as a director, a people manager, how do you promote, this culture within your team, and what are your advices for, other people managers? I mean, I'm sure everybody is just trying to figure out whether they have a minority in their team or not, how to coach. What is your advice on coaching for this type of scenarios?
Excellent question, Ali. The first thing I would say is that when you are in a people manager role, you're in a hiring position. My first inclination is to make sure that you're hiring first for talent and skill and capabilities. There is nothing worse than presumably being hired because you fit a specific look or ethnicity or gender. To me, that subsequently sets people up for failure. And everyone that you hire, you want them to do well. And as you and I know, as people managers, it takes a lot of work to hire people. And it also takes even more work if you have to manage them out. And I would say when you are looking in this realm of a diverse team and an inclusive team, what I have always tried to impart with a lot of the HR staff and recruiters is that we have to be a lot more creative and innovative about where we look, how we look, the engagement model, and also that we're creating these safe spaces within our ecosystems, our work ecosystems, where people feel included, that they feel as though their contributions matter, that their presence matters. And the moment you can do that, I think that you open up this array of diverse and inclusive candidates that want to join your organization. The three of us work for an amazing company, Microsoft, where we are embraced for our individual talent, our uniqueness, but what we do as a team is so critical, and you feel that throughout through the leadership, all the way up to Satya Nadella. And what I try to coach my team, and I lead a team of expert architects in the STEM field, much like Ali does as well. And I always have been challenged when I hear HR say things that we can't find enough diverse talent. Well, that's because you're looking in the wrong places. What are you doing creatively to reach out to communities of color? What are you doing to ensure that they are part of the conversation, that they're in your interviewing pool, that your candidate pool is rich with diverse candidates? And then your selection process becomes so much more full, but you also have to be mindful that you want to create a team that's strong, and you want to hire people that you are really helping and coaching and modeling and caring about their success with the company, because they too want to do well. So you want to make sure that you are putting people in the right place at the right time and in the right positions where they can do so. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think we are heading into the right direction overall, within the industry. But as you agree with me, and also Derek and I, we had a lot of conversation. Just like there's still a lot of shortage of powerful, smart females, even within our own MTC organization. Or again, doesn't have to be you have to be in minority, but just like what is your advice to all this superhero smart female in the industry that they can do so much, but somehow maybe they don't feel empowered to just go and apply for a job at Microsoft?
Yeah.
Why not? What's the message?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mentor a lot of women. I do a lot of young women early in career, and some long tenured in career. And one of the things that I always tell them, and this may sound, I don't mean to sound coy, but I've been in this field for over 30 years, and I've had my fair share of discrimination and racism, both directly and indirectly, overtly and subtly. What I try to tell, especially young women that are contemplating whether to enter the field of STEM or leave the field of STEM if you're long tenured, is that if you are expecting that you are going to get the proverbial blue, the boys are going to roll out the blue carpet for your arrival, you're going to get your feelings hurt.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of good feedback of folks that are watching us live. Craig just mentioned empathy, collaboration, understand, and authenticity are so important themes. April's words are so on point. Servandi just sent a message. That's a golden standard that April mentored me with. Be a walking contradiction. So it's like folks are all with you, and these are all
and I appreciate that, and it's so real. We just have to we have to make sure that we are putting ourselves in spaces where we can thrive, right? Asking those questions and being mindful of our contributions in the spaces that we occupy.
So I know that we, as the MTC org across the US and worldwide, we do a lot of events with students, with things like DJ Girls, lots of STEM programs that we have, and we work with the community and nonprofits. What do you think we can do collectively to help educate more and more students and younger generation that may not be in that category of minority, to be able to understand what does it mean to be an African American? Do you see an opportunity for us to be able to kind of expedite and make that a little bit more impactful within the society?
Yeah, and you said it, Ali. It's starting early. It's K through 12. I think the statistics is that at least for young girls, they maintain an interest in the STEM, math, science, and now computers and things of that nature. And then we lose them right around that high school, mid-high school. And we've got to make sure that we create programs early in early education so that we don't lose that pipeline. When I was in undergrad, and then I'll even venture to say even during graduate school, and I went off and got 2 master's degrees, again, the number of diverse students was very minimal. And we have to start keeping the interest, sustaining that interest and that curiosity very, very early. And I really feel like if we can make it more topical for the communities in which we all live, I think we have a better choice. Not even I think, I know we would have a better chance of maintaining and sustaining that number of or I should say the volume, if you will, of candidates, diverse candidates. We really need to start early, and not just start early, stay in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Stay in the game through whether it's after school programs, whether it's through summer internships, whether it's through co-ops, whatever the case may be. We want to maintain that curiosity, because it's curiosity that got me into this field. And a lot of us that are in the STEM fields, it's curiosity that keeps us here. You know, I was just thinking the other day, my God, I've been in this field for such a long period of time, and it is a passion of mine. It has changed my life. And despite all of the hardships, and we don't have enough time on this call for me to go through all of them that have occurred in this career, I'm still here. And I'm still thriving. And I have, over time, redefined what success looks like for me.
And a role model for others to see that, hey, you know, if she can, of course I can too. And this is going to be like, you know, great way to connect via LinkedIn and kind of learn from each other. So Sonia, a great friend of, you know, me and Derek, she's also the president of PAM in SoCal. She just put a comment that, you know, only one hiring manager has ever reached out to tap into our diverse network to fill a position. I encourage all hiring managers to tap into your local ERGs for quality talent. I think that's on point.
Thanks, Sonia.
That's one point.
Appreciate that comment. Appreciate it. So I interviewed a woman at NPR, VP of Digital Technologies at NPR, a couple of weeks ago on my podcast, and she had a lot to say about building more inclusive and diverse AI for the world. Mm-hmm. And that's really important. And one of the things that she said, and it's resonating with a lot of the things that we're talking about today, she was talking about there's three kind of things that you have to do to build more diverse products or have this more inclusive reality of how you're building your technology. And it all takes a long time, because you have to hire a diverse and inclusive set of employees, people who are actually building. That's very hard, and it's very expensive. It took 6 to 10 months more than it would be to just hire someone that doesn't represent that. You have to use diverse and inclusive data. Your data has to be unbiased, or as unbiased as possible. And then finally, you have to be marketing against a consumer user base that's also diverse, so that you can get into those markets and collect more data. And I'm a data person, you know, but this is a technology discussion. When we think about what you guys are doing in the Microsoft Technology Centers, the technology that Microsoft is releasing, the types of ecosystems and experiences you're building in your centers, what are you seeing in those experiences, whether it be accessibility or whatever the tools are showcasing? Mm-hmm. Can you give us a little bit of information or just a story about what that looks like and how you build those experiences to be diverse?
Yeah, and I'm sure Ali would want to chime in on this, because he also is in the same role that I am and runs the Irvine Center. But what you're seeing more of is inclusivity. You know, when you think about the industries in which we serve, and as you remarked, Derek, the customer base or the consumer base that we serve, it is a lot more diverse than what may have been in the past, or I should say recognized and acknowledged in the past. The buying power, if you will, of people of color and diverse communities is significant. So it's a bottom line imperative that you ensure that people that look like the customers and the consumers that you want to serve are infused in your decision-making process. They are part of your table, if you will, the C-suite table, which we still have a significant lack of existence. And when you think about the experiences and the industries that we serve in our centers, we see a myriad of walks of life that come into our centers. And we are as an organization, we're very mindful of that. And we want to make sure that we are addressing and approaching each of these communities, all of these communities, if you will, that are being served, whether it's in retail or health life sciences or in manufacturing. All of these ecosystems have the same, or industries, if you will, have the same common denominator. And that is a global and diverse community and consumer base. So our experiences, what we call our demonstrations, they all have to represent that. And Ali, what would you say? Would you agree?
Totally agree. And interestingly enough, this is going to be actually a call out to our next guest for our next broadcast, Courtney from Columbia University. They are doing something fascinating that we will talk about it more. And our plan is to hopefully roll this out within the MTCs, including yours and other centers that we have. They built this program using VR technologies that allow anybody who's not an African American to put this headset on and relive the experience from childhood all the way to adulthood. And when you think about the power of this, and I was talking to her the other day, and it's just mind-blowing, what technology can do. I mean, you can watch videos, you can read books as, a non-African American. But if you have this immersive experience, and that's something that, let's say, you can come to the center and kind of go through this, whether you're a 12-year-old or you're a 50-year-old, that's going to give you a different perspective. And to me, this is the kind of opportunities that we have collectively to, make an impact.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's sort of that whole notion of walking in someone's shoes.
Yeah.
You can empathize when you can see yourself in someone else's experience. Now, albeit you won't ever be able to fully embrace all of the nuances that come along with that. But if you can get a small glimpse into what that's like, Derek, you asked me earlier about what it felt like walking into a room and be the only. And, sadly, that still occurs today. Fortune 500 just released their list of female CEOs. And they remarked in this report that they had a new high of 37 female CEOs of the 500.
Yeah.
Right. That's the new high. But not one of them was Black. It was a Black woman. And
I saw that.
Yeah. And it was very telling because I remember, again, I didn't have role models that looked like me when I was coming through my career. And what is interesting is that not a whole lot has changed. So if you look at across the Fortune 500 C-suite, if you will, if you look at the sites that will list the executive leadership makeup, you still don't see us. And in no way am I advocating that you put anyone in a position for the sake of fulfilling your female or ethnicity quota, if you will. What I'm saying is that as a Black woman, despite multiple degrees, so lots of education, lots of experience, we still hit that proverbial wall, ceiling, whatever you want to call it. It's a barrier, the barrier of entry, the barrier of access, and the barrier of the ability to lead large organizations and lead these organizations of real influence and impact to the company. As much as I can appreciate the notion of D&I, I often and too often see many of us put in just those roles. And what I know for sure is that we are ready, we're prepared, and we're able and capable of leading real substantial organizations. I'm excited because I work for a company that I can look to my left, I can look to my right, I can look behind me, but more specifically, I can look above me, and there are women, Black women, leading real impactful, bottom line impacting organizations. And that's an amazing thing to see. And we need to see more of that. And not just because your company should do the right thing, but because we're ready. We've been ready. We're ready to lead. We're ready to take charge.
Quick question here, and this is just like ad hoc question. So when you joined Microsoft 2 years ago, you came in, what was your experience? From the interview process and the flow all the way to onboarding and where you are today?
It was an amazing experience, Ali. It was very welcoming. Now, I'll have to admit, I was already hooked because Microsoft is such an amazing company. I think Satya Nadella, in my view, kind of walks on water. I think he's fantastic, and our leadership is equally as fantastic. But I was also, you know, really open to the change. You know, I left the vice presidency, and it was exciting to me because not only was I now going to be able to come back home to the Philadelphia area and be with my family more regularly, but I was going to do so with a company that was transforming every part of the globe, every industry. And the onboarding process was welcoming. My peers, including yourself, everyone was very engaged and came with open arms and wanted to help me. I had a team that I had to build. Some were there, but those that, you know, and I have an amazing team of architects. I could not do anything that I do today. Any successes that we've had have all been attributed to their great work. But the onboarding and this coming on board has just been no short of amazing. It really has been.
Well, I should say that sometimes you fight with me because I work with your team more than I should. But yeah, and
working with you.
When you hired, you know, we had a conversation with Craig, good friend of mine, and he's also the lead for the worldwide. He's on the call, by the way. And I was amazed how he was talking about you, and you know how you are so business oriented, like, you know, a leader, like, you know, talk about the impact, not just technology. And I could say, like, you know, after a couple of years or maybe 2 years you've been here, I see that in action. So I should definitely give kudos to Greg for having that mindset and, you know, bringing the right talent. As you mentioned, not just because you're a minority or you're a African-American woman, but also having the right mentality and, you know, be able to make the impact to the org and the customers.
Yeah, I always remark Craig's you know, one of the smartest guys in the world. He's gonna love that for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So we've talked a little bit about, you know, historically what's been going on. We've talked about a little bit about what's going on today as well. And a lot of people are super focused on the future.
Yeah.
Like, I just saw a live broadcast with President Barack Obama yesterday, and it was very clear that there's a lot of momentum, especially because of what's going on right now. Obviously, D&I it's a massive charter at a lot of organizations, especially Microsoft. I'm part of Blacks at Microsoft. There's other ERGs, employee resource groups, that folks can join and be parts of. I know Pride Month is going on right now. There's a lot of push to get people to embrace that, even though that's pretty hard right now, given that a lot of attention is on things that I think deserve a little bit more priority at the current moment. But when you think about the future, we've talked about education, we've talked about allyship and listening. Is there anything that you don't like? And it obviously doesn't have to be about the company we work with, but is there anything that you just see and you just tell yourself that needs to change? Like systematically that needs to change. You know, we're a high profit business. Every business in tech tends to, you know, be pretty wealthy. Like, what else could be doing? What else could these companies be doing, do you think?
Great question. I'm going to go back to my previous comment. We need to see more of us in leadership roles.
Yeah.
That is the only way things are going to change. And I'm not talking about just in first and second line management. I'm talking about the executive level. And that's across all industries, across all companies. You know, I now speak routinely with C-suite. And I can count in my 2 years of being with the company how many of the C-suite customers in the industries that I deal with and that I work with on a regular basis, where they look like me. And that saddens me because that still is one of those moving targets, a North Star, you know, and I really want us as a community to think about inequity comes in all shapes, fashions, and forms. It's not just how we engage with the police. Diversity and inclusion and being equitable and being fair, and being open to diverse and inclusivity means that in all avenues, in all rooms, in all venues, you see people who look like the community in which you live. I worked for America Online way back in the day, and as the kids say, way back in the day. And I remember at the time, Colin Powell, we had just asked him to join our board. And I remember we were having a meeting, and we had a board member that says, "Thank goodness he's here, because the name of your company is America Online, but it looks nothing like America." And I remember that some 30 some odd years later, how powerful that statement was. So when I hear things about, we have these great diversity inclusion programs, but then I look at the number of people of diverse hue that are 1 to 2 heartbeats away from the CEO, and I see the lack thereof, I then question, well, what are the real objectives that you're trying to meet? I'd love to see more of us at those tables, making those decisions, owning the large share of the segments of business, owning the large revenue pipeline. Those are the real changes that will help to trickle down throughout the companies.
Good. I have 2 interesting questions that came from the audience, if you guys don't mind.
Yes, please.
One from Antoine. He's asking, do you have some suggestion or ideas on how we have these types of discussions with our customers, vendors, and other professional partners? Have you had positive, negative experiences in this area?
Great question. I've actually had quite a few conversations with my customers. I actually recently just spoke about D&I for SAP, as a matter of fact, at their headquarters here in Pennsylvania, because they, like many other companies, are struggling with the conversation. And I would say the first part of this is, don't go in with the expectation that the conversation will be difficult. There may be a space where they really want to have the conversation, but don't know how to. I've had many of my colleagues ask me to have these conversations with our customers and our partners because they want to have the conversation. Many are struggling with how to start, and that's okay. How to build these pipelines, how to build these programs. And I think it's a true testament of our culture as a company that companies now seek our advice. They want to know, how did you do it? And I love the fact that we as a company don't subscribe to the notion that we have all the answers or that we fixed everything. We come from and we embrace growth mindset. We still have a lot to do. We still have a lot to learn and a lot more growing. But I would say, in answer to that question, just start the conversation. Just start it. You will more than likely find that it will be a welcoming conversation with those that you are seeking to have it with.
I think a quick add-on, super quick. Another thing that you can do, and I've been doing this week, is just if you have customers that are represented by the Black community, I have just been reaching out to them. Even if I don't have that relationship, I reached out to a customer this morning, and I felt a closer bond to him, and not as buy my stuff, but it's a relationship. It's a human being type of engagement. And that's very easy. You can do that right now.
That's right. Start right now. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Ali.
Sonia had another interesting comment. So she said, we need diverse leaders across the spectrum, as oftentimes there is a big gap between the sentiment to the C-suite and that of frontline managers. Closing the gap will require the installation of diverse talent in every level of management. There is an enormous amount of literally evidence to support this concept. And I guess, everybody agrees with that.
Yeah, that's my point. So you hit it right in the nose. It's one of the things that I think will change the paradigm. If we are in the room, when I say the room, I'm talking of the room with the big table, where the real decisions are being made, right? If we are there, again, we are able to trickle down. We'll feel the effects and the impact throughout the ecosystem, throughout your organizations. But we have to be visible. We have to be there. We have to be a part of the conversation. We have to be a part of the hiring process. We have to be in a position to hire, right? In order to do that, you have to make sure. And I don't know how any company can escape. And I think we have plenty of examples in the news today where companies have had some significant missteps in their marketing and their branding because they didn't have a diverse set of people or executives, if you will, within at the big table. And I mean, I won't rattle off their names because I don't want to give them any free advertisement, but there's plenty of examples of, where you've seen some missteps, and you can mostly say, and I'm sure many of us have sat back and watched these things occur, and we've said, well, I bet you they didn't have anyone at that table that steered them the right direction. There was no one saying, no, you might not want to name your product that, because that will offend this community, right? So you need to make sure that you are including us throughout the chain, and that chain should be the decision-making chain, the real impactful chain.
Go ahead. No, I've noticed I've had a recent, I don't want to say recent, this is over the last 3 years since I essentially joined Microsoft, but I have a sensitivity when there's an email that comes over. And this is not targeting anyone at all, but when an email comes over introducing a new employee to the team, the first thing I do is I look to see who they represent.
Yeah.
And not that I'm counting, but when I don't see a representative hire of the diverse and inclusive community, it's like a ding. It's like a missed opportunity. It feels like, we could have, did we have enough candidates?
Right.
And I think it's just that awareness, and maybe some folks don't see or feel that, but that hurts when there's so many different missed opportunities. And I will give a little free advertisement to a competitor, just because this is not a Microsoft thing. But the other day I was on LinkedIn and I saw that Zoom had just hired a chief diversity officer, a Black man.
Yeah.
And that changed the whole hour of my day, to see other tech businesses, other businesses in the world paying attention to this. And it's not just Microsoft, it's not just Google, it's not just these specific companies that typically do really great things for the world, but it's more far reaching. And I think a lot of folks have sensitivity to those types of hires.
Yeah, I think there is a tendency to be hypersensitive about it because you see such a lack thereof, right? And I would go as far as saying not only the new hires, but also the notices that you get about promotions. Who's getting promoted to the higher levels?
I agree.
They look like, candidly, are they people of color? Are they African American in this case? Top of mind today. And when you don't see that, you do tend to think, wow, was that yet another missed opportunity? Was there a diverse candidate pool? Because you yourself start thinking, well, I know some people, or I have colleagues that I know that would be great for that role. Were they even considered? And then to your point about Zoom, I saw that as well. And I remarked on this earlier. And look, it's not lost on me that the notion of a chief diversity officer having such an impactful role in many large organizations and small organizations, but most specifically in large organizations. I know how impactful that will be. But what I would also like to see, in addition to that, I'd also like to see announcements of the new CEO, the new CIO, the new CTO, the new CFO. I'd like to see more of those. The new SVP, EVP. I'd like to see more of those. And again, those that operate or oversee and have oversight, I should say, over large P&Ls or P&L in general, revenue, real impactful parts of the organization that will in fact affect your bottom line. We used to say that roles that did not have revenue or budget oversight were vulnerable positions. right? I'd love to see us in those types of roles that really impact the bottom line. And to that end, also include the boardroom. That's something else. There's a whole topic around that, being able to see that, because again, short of doing that, you remove the opportunities to expand and grow as a company, and not just your bottom line, but also your consumer base.
Stacy just put a comment, just following what you just said, that it's employees as ambassadors amplifying the company's employer brand from a D&I perspective, and I think that's
spot on.
That's Stacey Albert.
Yep.
Yeah, Stacy. You're amazing. Thanks for that. She goes above and beyond to really ask the questions. She's a great listener, and she is definitely a diversity and inclusion ambassador locally. Absolutely. Thank you for that.
So April, one other question. So we just wrapped up an internal town hall within our team with Jackie Wright. What is your reflection from what you heard? And I know that you shared your story as well. But what was your thought after hearing others and the conversation and dialogue that we had within the team?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say that I think we can all share in that we are incredibly proud to work for a company whose leadership embraces these types of conversations. They don't shy away from it. We're not afraid to tackle these issues head on, for that matter. And Jackie Wright, who is is a Black woman with a fabulous accent. I always joke about that. I wish I spoke that way. But what I took away from this is that not only was it great to see our colleagues and our staff and our peers share their experiences, but do so in a safe space. The comfort level that it takes, not only with yourself, but the trust and comfort level that you have with your peers and your leadership to understand that there are no ground rules. There's no judgments, right? That we are here to listen. We're here to understand. We're here to learn. I think that was the major thing I took away from it, because again, I've been doing this for over 30 years and I've worked for some pretty large companies and can candidly share that not many would have had this type of courage at all.
That's spot on. So can I ask you a Novell question?
Yes.
I'm kidding. Yeah, so April and I, we both used to work with Novell Netfer and all those stuff that young generation is talking about. So I'm not giving up, at least fair age, but I'm old. You can see it from my birth. That was just a joke. I know that we have 5 minutes left. Derek, do you have any additional question, or should we just have April to do a closeout and share some additional thoughts?
April, I would love to. This is your stage. This is, we want to hear from you. You're an amazing person and guest, and I'm learning in real time. And I know a lot of folks will be learning on demand after this session as well as live right now.
Yeah.
What anything that you'd like to leave the discussion with? Anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'll share that I mentor a lot of young women and also women long tenured in career, as well as some men. And I always get asked, what would be the major advice? What would be the one thing of advice or jewel that you would drop? And I would say, and I always say, what you fear most, you should do. If you are afraid to do public speaking, speak more publicly. If you are afraid to tackle that hard subject in school, take that subject and take an advanced course as well. Even if you fail it the first time, take it again. We live in a time where right now we should learn to be fearless. It is one of the most powerful things we can do for ourselves. If you fear having the conversation with someone who doesn't look like you, have the conversation. Have the conversation, spark the conversation. Speak to that stranger. Now, don't do anything that would put yourself at risk, but certainly be open to it, right? You know, I hear that often where people have talked themselves out of something. I think it was Ali that brought up the topic in terms of, you know, some women don't want to apply for certain jobs because they feel as though they may not be qualified. I always say, what's the worst that could happen? You don't get a call or you don't get the job, but you're no worse for the wear because you put yourself out there. Tackle that fear, embrace that fear, use that fear as fuel. Again, I have been in this field for a long time, and Ali knows I'm not very tall. I'm about 5'1" and some change. But what I do, and I'm not very intimidating, although some say I am, but I don't think so. But I do live without fear, and that's something that I learned over time. I didn't start out that way. You know, I came through this career with a lot of tears, a lot of sleepless nights, and I don't do that any longer because I know who I am. And I want the younger people, and even some that are not so young, to embrace that. You are valuable. What you have to offer is valuable. Your contributions mean something. And if you find yourself at a company or in a situation where that's not the case, then remove yourself. Remove yourself from whatever that situation is, because life is too short, as we have seen, sadly, this in these last few weeks.
Thank you so much for that, April. This was a very special session. And if anyone would like to get a hold of you, well, you're tagged in about 8 million places on LinkedIn for this this broadcast. So I'll encourage folks to connect with you on LinkedIn and to reach out. Is there any other way you'd like folks to reach out to you?
That's the best way. I keep that it's on my phone. I get the alerts. So, you know, and I'm always welcome to have people join my network. I love LinkedIn. I think it's an amazing platform for outreach. So absolutely, LinkedIn is perfectly a great way to reach me.
Thanks a lot, April. Ali, you want to close us out?
Well, first of all, I'm blown away with the comments and the engagements of our awesome audience. You guys are awesome. You make this dialogue even better. So keep it coming. Let's continue this offline. And I'm sure April is going to respond to a lot of comments that you guys made.
I will.
We are hoping to see you guys on our next program. The next one, I promise you, is going to be also good. We're going to talk to Courtney, and hopefully, we're going to do a quick demo of what we're planning to bring to MTCs. That is going to be very relevant to this topic and the situation that we are dealing with. But we love your feedback. How can we make this program better? Derek, thank you for all the hard work, preparing and the logistics. And we want to thank Social Life for giving us the technology and LinkedIn.
Yes, and thank you, Derek and Ali, for inviting me. This was a wonderful way to spend the day. Thank you.
We will have you back. This is not going to be the last time.
I'm counting on it.
All right. Everybody, have a great day.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Stay healthy. Stay safe. Thanks.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.